Well, as Brendan said, my name is Jacob Patton. I'm the Director of Data and Integrations here. We have Milos and we have Petter. So to cover our agenda today, we're going to talk about why use an API, what is an API, and then how can you use an API as a beginner, as an intermediate, as an expert, and then talk about some of our integrations. So why use an API? APIs allow you to do a lot of things, but students want a seamless experience and they want it to be personalized. So if you can bring the data and the signals into Element451, you can provide that personalized experience to them. So then the better you know your student, the better you can work with them. It also reduces switching systems. So you don't have to have data in 5 different systems. You don't have to be working in different systems. It's all in one location. So you can spend more time connecting and helping rather than going back and forth. Come on. All right, and the more signals you bring in, the more informed you can be. So the more you have, the more you can do. And we also understand that sometimes business processes means you need to use software or resources that are outside of Element451. So what is an API? By a show of hands, how many of you here think you could define what an API is? All right, we've got a couple of you. How many of you want to run and hide when I say the word API? So an API stands for Application Programming Interface. And at its most basic, you send a request to an endpoint, which is just a URL, and generally it returns something. So sometimes you send data, and it says, you know, I accept your data. Sometimes you just say, hey, I want this resource. And it sends back a list of IDs. It sends back something from a system. And then you'll sometimes hear about an open API. And basically, what an open API is it's something that is publicly available. Now, sometimes it's restricted, like in our case, to clients, but it is open to any of our clients. You guys can go in, you can use it. We want to make it easy for you to access your data, to be consumed by our program and by other software. And then you might also hear about types of APIs. So we are a REST-based API, and we use JSON. So I've got 2 different formats of data up here. The first one is JSON, so you've got your brackets and your quotes. And the other one is SOAP, and that uses XML. You don't have to memorize this. It's just this is what it looks like when we're working with the data. So you'll see some other examples of JSON data in here. But basically, APIs allow for easy integrations. What does this mean for us? It means we wanted to make it easy for you to access your data and to interact with systems outside of the web interface. What does it mean for you as a client? It means you can do anything you want. Most commonly, clients will import and export data. But with our API, you can also register someone for an event. You can have someone fill out a third-party form and feed it in as a form. You could do just about anything you want that you can do in the graphic interface, you can do through an API. All right, so for beginners. Now, maybe you don't know how to code, maybe you don't want to mess with JSON data, maybe you just want to make systems talk. We've got Mallory up here. I chose this picture for a reason because Mallory doesn't know how to code. But Mallory does know how to use Zapier. And I asked her to make sure she'd be okay with that. But she does know how to use Zapier, which is a middleware. And that middleware can help bridge the gap between systems without having to know the code. You don't have to know Python. You don't have to know JSON. You just need to know this is the data I want, and this is the data I want to send somewhere. So in reality, middleware uses the API. It talks to the system through the API. It's not something that's talking directly to Element, it's through our API. One example is Zapier. It's a tool that lets you automate your processes. There's 6,000 plus apps on the Zapier's store, and it's a no-code drag and drop interface. There is an official Element451 app. So you can go in and you can say, you know, when something happens in the system, I want it to be able to send data out. Or with an external site, if something happens, I want to be able to send data back in. And it's accessible from within Element451. So this GIF here that I have, this is taking a spreadsheet in Google Drive, and it says when a new row comes in. So you've got your event. When a new row comes in, we're going to have a trigger. We got my spreadsheet, my worksheet, and then the column with that something comes in. You're going to grab the data, and then you can do something with it. So in this case, we can add a note to a user. You can add a task. You can create a conversation. You can create a form submission. And then you go through and you say, here's my account in Element451. Here's where I want to map the fields. So here's my column in Google Drive. Here's where we'll go in Element. And then you can test it. Now, a couple things you'll need to get this started is you'll need a connection to your Element451 system. You'll need to select a segment, an import and export template, not the task, a template. And then you also need a trigger. So in this case, you've got your form submitted was the trigger. And then you have, is a user updated? Is an application submitted? And once that happens, you can then take an action and send it somewhere. So Michael talked about you could take a email and send it from your CRM to a Facebook lead using Zapier. And then this is also built into the Element451 interface. So if you have a Zapier account, you can come in and log in. And it's all within Element451. You don't have to go to a separate site to set up your runs and your zaps. And it's a pretty straightforward process. It works well. Another tool, I have myself. So some examples that we have are GTU uses it to send form responses from Pathwrite into Element451. Northwest will send leads into Element451. Presidio adds an activity from Activity scheduling into 451 when students want to schedule a meeting. So in reality, with the 6,000 plus apps that Zapier has, you can do pretty much anything. You could do X when Y happens, whether that's sending data in or again, sending data out. Another middleware that we have an app for is Make. So you can add an activity, add tasks, export data, import data, add an external user event. You can find user IDs by email addresses. It's a little bit different than Zapier. So this is United Aviate's integration. We have a webhook with incoming data, set some variables, send a outgoing request to a testing software they use, and then when we get a response, we either import a unique URL for that student, or we send an email saying, hey, something went wrong. Now, it can get a lot more complicated, and it can look like this. This is Presidio and their Google integration with lots of different branches, lots of different, if we have our webhook incoming, we have it saying, hey, there's this response down here. If it's not authorized, if something happens over here, we're going to send an email. We've got a different webhook response coming over here. So it really is a powerful tool that doesn't require a lot of coding. I find it quite fun, and it's how we do some of our integrations. Because there's no point in creating lots of code if this will do it for us sometimes. Like with these tools, we don't have to go out and authenticate and create our own Google integration. It's all here. All right. Petter will talk about the intermediate.
Thank you, Jacob. Hey, everyone. You probably see me maybe for the first time. That I'm Petter. I'm the Chief Technology Officer. So I've been working with Element for like 7 years almost. So for most of the features that we will be presenting is we needed to figure them out as we were trying to become beginner and intermediate and experts. So hopefully you will enjoy. So let me start. So do anyone here know some coding? A bit or a little bit? That's great. So I will show you how you can use what we have currently, and you can utilize our web import API. We built that specifically for our own use case internally, and then we're thinking, well, this is really good. We can give it to other people to also use. Most of you are familiar with this thing. What is that? Does anybody know? That's the data import mapping, right? Yeah, so this is the most important part to know if you want to integrate with Element on your own. You need to know this right side here, the side that we call mappings or slugs. These are basically the data points into which you can send data or read data from. They are really flexible, and I will show you. So with the API that we allowed, so you remember for what was like 4 or 5 years, we did have data import and export available. You have been using that for SFTP or automating certain data imports or exports or even documents. But now that's available as an API, as an open API. So what you can use, this is a tool called Postman, but that's not important. You can use any other HTTP tool. These are just HTTP requests. You can specify your full request, like all the data that you want to send, and just select a template that you have already built in the UI. So you can go into Element interface, build the mappings, and just select that in, send it over. Another example here is really cool. You have the columns, so you can even go inline and define everything yourself if you're a little bit more advanced. So you can see that here. You see, there's a lot of stuff because we do have a lot of features available. You select the fields that you want, you select the transformations you want to apply, if you want to capitalize or uppercase certain letters, if you want to do date transformations. One more thing that's really important is the transformations here that you see. This is something that we call an auto mapping feature. So auto mapping feature is really important when you have multiple systems in play. You probably have your programs in one system that have certain codes and IDs. You have majors in a different system. So when you want to import, how do you match them? That's a hard process. So auto mapping allows you to do a lookup inside of Element based on any column, and you can find the exact program that you want. So that's one of the things that's also exposed. You have actually been using that via the UI. If you went to import or export, you would actually be that and have like a transformation that's auto-applied, but this is how it looks under the hood. So this engine is the thing that it has been powering Element for 5 years. Now it's totally open. So as this is one more good example here. It showcases, this is an actual, from a customer example. We are sending a student email. We are sending, how did you hear about us, and an application term. So imagine now you are reading from, there's an external system where you capture applications. That can be Common App, that can be CFNC. You can read that data. You can use this and send that to Element and populate those fields easily. All the fields are supported. So you can use system fields, you can use custom fields, you can use the value lookups that we just explained. You can even use the calculated fields or the formula fields as well. In terms of exporting data, the story is the same. We expose everything. This is a more basic example. You can build a template in Element. You can select a segment of people you're interested in, and you can export that using an API. This gives you, see here, a list of users. This is a second example where you can specify the templates in line. You can select what you want using an API. This is really powerful. If you have IT personnel, you can give them this, and they have a full control of what you're reading if they want to automate certain processes. So please remember that you can use this for your own integrations. So all the advanced all the advanced documentation for this is found here, integrations with Element. A really important part is the data library. Data library is what documents all the fields that exist in Element. Because how do you know? You would need to go to the UI, search, find, select. So this is where you can find them. Alternatively, if you don't want to read the documentation, you can go to import, export templates. You can build your own template of data that you want. And we have added this nice button. The GIF has went on, but hopefully it will become again, where you can copy all the internal setup, and you just plug it into Postman and you can run it. So again, really useful for your IT teams because you can build everything for them, give them this, and they will be able to connect with Element. So here's an example. Next up, we are moving a little bit. So this is webhooks. This is a new feature we introduced recently, around a month ago. Actually, again, we built this for our own needs. We needed to find a way to trigger our own integrations on any event that happens in Element. So webhooks were a way to do that. They allow you to listen for different triggers in workflows. You configure the webhook. You just select a URL. You send what's the body. Here you can see, you can use this like raw JSON with tokens, or you can actually select a template and use that template and send the data. So kind of like I can explain a use case. A good use case is, for example, you have a third-party tool that's not connected to Element. How do you listen, for example, when a student is admitted, you want to trigger a process there. you probably, so until now, sorry, but until now you have probably been doing probably a batch export and a batch import, right? Well, with Hypervisor, this can be real time. You can listen for events in Element happening in real time, and you can trigger other stuff. So here's an example how this looks in workflows. You set up a trigger, the events of interest that you want, and on the step, you have the execute webhook action, which is configured pointing to the webhook. Okay. So going to a more advanced section. So this is mostly talking about kind of scenarios that we have saw as we were building. And I want to use this mostly to motivate you to don't be afraid of integrations. They are hard, but as time goes, systems that we use get better and better. We all get better. So the interactivity between them becomes much easier. So here, we can show you this thing. These are different partners that are using certain integrations already. They built this themselves. So WakeTech actually has an export document script that runs daily, sorry, not daily, hourly, picks up the documents in real time and sends them to OnBase. Brian has its own application portal. They collect the implications there, Brian College, and they want to send that into Element, so they use our API to send that. LSAC, same thing, they have their own specific system. They need to connect to Element, so they use our API to do that. University of Arkansas Grantham, they have their own lead forms. So the idea was, okay, they want to use them, they have a lot of traffic on them, they don't want to switch them with Element forms. We're like, okay, you have our API, you can use that as well. So in terms of where does your team start finding how to do this? There's an Element documentation. It's solely open. It shows all the different routes that we support, what you can do with different resources, how can you post forms, how can you post event registrations. So your team can take a look at this. It also explains how to authenticate and authorize for access to Element, because Element, we say it's an open API. It's documentation is open, but you still need to be authenticated. So it explains how to get an API key and how to call the API with that API key. Next up, this is something that Mike has mentioned in the previous session. He was mentioning how Spark utilizes Snowflake data sharing to power their own BI analysis. So Element actually has a Snowflake data lake. We use the Snowflake as a data lake. We copy all our data from our main database into Snowflake. So all the data that you actually have, you can also access it in Snowflake. There's a feature in Snowflake called data sharing that you can use to access the data. Your team can have access to the raw data, but also our data analysts team have been working on building prepared tables for you. So your BI analysts can use them without needing to go deeper into how Element structures its own data structure. This is really interesting, a really powerful use case, because you can bring your own BI tool. You can go in, whatever your BI tool is, you can connect to Snowflake. Snowflake is kind of currently taking over the market as a data lake, so most popular BI tools support it. And I'll do a little bit of intro about our integrations. They are really complex, but we think we have nailed most of them so far. So all these things that I've shown, the tools that we have, we did not have when we started. So as time was going, our partners were coming in, they have these troubles, and we need to figure out how to solve them. So I'll mention a couple of them. So in here, to highlight, we need to do a Common App integration. Common App actually has, and I'll not go in deep detail. My coworker will go more in that, but I'll just mention that we did a Common App. We did the Illusion Ethos for Banner and Colleague. There's a CFNC, Populi, and then Destiny 1. This is a typo. So all of them are really interesting, and we will give you the details. Milos, my coworker, please, can you come in? Milos is actually a data engineer who has been working on building most of these. So Milos.
Thanks, Peter. So I'll try to showcase you how we utilized Element platform to integrate with different systems, and what challenges we faced and how we solved them. So first, a lot of you know, like Common App is widely used application portal that allows students to apply to multiple colleges and in universities simultaneously. they have a process where they export data on their SFTP servers. We use this their API to download that data to our SFTP servers, and that allows us to keep the history of data. And we utilized part of the platform element, which is data import. And since Common App has standardized format of offloading data, we were able to create a template and reuse that template across multiple clients and load the data instantly. The next one is a lot more complex. It's calling and banner. We are using Illusion Ethos as a proxy. They build an API, so we are able to read and send the data into both those systems. And we've created bidirectional integration with their system. We're reading the data from those systems. So they have a system for notifying us when there's an update on any resource in their system. And that's important because marketing and people that are using Element are leveraging the real-time data and updates, and we need to have the latest information there. So on any updates in their system, we are fetching those information and syncing them into Element. On the Element side, previously we had hard-coded the actions, but we found out that it's better to leverage the workflows, and we can now have pretty much any action in Element. We can have it as a trigger to send the data to Ethos or colleague and banner. And you can set, for example, like if students' decision change, you can then do the sync. You can sync on pretty much any event. We are using web data import to load the information back to maybe like schools, emails, and some fields of interest that we are loading from Ethos to Element. And we are using web export to have the complete student data when we are sending to Ethos. The next integration that we did is CFNC. In North Carolina, CFNC serves as a common system for the college applications. Our integration with CFNC extends beyond application data. We are also loading the documents like high school transcripts and application previews. CFNC doesn't have that ability to like notify us that there are some changes in their system, so we are picking the applications hourly, and we are trying to download the documents for those students that we fetched their applications. We have part in Element that's document import, and that part of Element can load documents in batches, and using smart rules, we can attach the right document to the right student, so you can have all your data in. Those documents are important for the admissions, so they can know more information about student. For some of our partners, we did like full circle. We did Ethos integration. They have colleague. We are loading data from colleague to Element. Sorry, for CFNC. We are loading the CFNC data from into Element and offloading it to colleague. So like full circle and sending the informations from Ethos back to Element. The next integration that we did was Populi one. It was for our partners Presidio. This was a really interesting integration because it involved streamlining the process of creating Google and Zoom accounts, and they needed for their admitted students to have automatically created Google and Zoom accounts for the specific emails. And well, we didn't want. It was a really tough job to like partnering with Google and creating application and writing all the documentation and requirements. So we leveraged the Make. You saw the previously in presentation. You saw that tool. They have that's a integration platform similar to Zapier. They have extensive collection of already pre-built connectors, and we use that to like create easily those accounts and streamline that process. They also needed real-time information about application payments in that SIS Populi because they have multiple teams, and some of the team members that don't have access to Element. They're just using Populi. So we created a real-time integration, and we are sending the payment information directly there in real time. For Destiny one, that was interesting thing. In Element, we are tracking all sorts of analytical events, and we are basing a lot of things on those analytical events. And we noticed that our partners would also like to have their own custom analytical events in Element. So we exposed purposely built webhooks that clients can use to offload those events of interest in Element. I think that's it. I think this should inspire you to create your own integrations and maybe reach us if you have any questions regarding those. We will try to guide you through this process and like help you to leverage any part of our platform and make this integration process really good and useful for you.
And we do have time for some Q&A, so any and every question you have, let us know, raise a hand, and we'll get a mic to you. Lindsay.
If we import information into Elements and then mistakenly, like, if we change like the application major and then when we import again, duplicate and import some of the same students, is there a way to see a history of what's been changed? Like if a student had the application of undecided major and a counselor spoke to them and changed it in Element to a specific major, but then when it was imported again, it overrode the information. Is there a way to see a history of changes?
Not right now.
Okay.
It is something that we plan to do, to add like a data capture log. So every field change can be saved as a snapshot. So you can audit that. We already do that for a couple of fields. We do that for the territory field, for the name fields, for the address, but not for every, for example, application field. So we will just extend that and add more over time.
Perfect. Thank you.
What are the integrations that are coming up or things that are on the horizon for you?
Sure. So we have currently investigating to do a PeopleSoft integration, Workday integration, Canvas integration. So these are all customers that are coming in and they ask us, hey, can you do this? We are looking at the systems, finding out best scenarios. We are confident that we can do these, especially since we did the Ethos one really good. We actually built a reusable Ethos integration. It's not a new customer coming in. We're not building everything from scratch. We have a plug and play solution that's working. So we try to have the same concepts across different systems, and we will extend Element as we see that we're missing certain features. So you will see that evaluate. We are all in integrations. Like we need to be in a connected world. So you will see us investing a lot.
Hey, got a question. Over here. Hey, so we use Zapier already to do some stuff with like Spark Hire, it's things of nature. Is there an integration that could update in our notes for communication purposes, for like phone calls that we make to prospects or anything of that nature that can kind of automate our record for when we communicate with prospects? Or is this something that we just continue to key in manually?
So if I were to understand, you already use Zapier, and
Yes.
you want to use it to automate phone calls, or
In a way, just
Or-
our note taking from phone calls to, because like now, let's just say if we send a text message in Element, it shows up in their activity log that we sent the message and things of that nature. But we make phone calls from Ring Central. So if there's someone,
yes, if Ring Central is on Zapier, if it has events, you can send those as custom activities into Element. So when you enter that, there's like that card that shows like the student activity. You will see all those events like intertwined with all the information that you send there. So on that, like Element does support a custom activity event because we cannot predict all the things that our customers might need. So you can use the custom activity event and model it differently. You can add different types to differentiate. So you can do that.
all right, thanks.
Better. I just wanted to expand on that really quick. So, usually external systems have a ID. So in those cases, it's a phone number or an email address or some kind of external ID. And we match that automatically when we send those external events. So if you're using what you're talking about, the phone number, then if something comes into Element with that phone number, it's matched automatically to a person that has that accept phone number, and now it's attaching that activity to it. So it doesn't have to be emails, because email has been the primary unique identifier for importing data, but not necessarily with custom activities as they're coming in from other systems.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. My question is in regards to exporting data, especially when it comes to student applications. Is there something in the future where we would be able to download one file for like applications? Because currently they download as a zip folder with the different application components. So is there something in the pipeline where we can just download the application into one PDF, for example?
Right, and you would like to do that per student or at a batch? Like
Both.
both.
Yeah.
You can do it right now for per student. Anytime a student submits an application, that application PDF is created that you can see on the documents if you enter a student record. So every time a student submits an application, we automatically generate that PDF from the questions they answered on the application. So you can do that on a single record. In terms of batch, we do have the document export. We can select all, but it does give you you can configure, do you want a zip or not? So you could do that already. Have you looked at the document export?
We have. So with the batch, they'll download in each folder, but then in each folder, it will be the different components. So I was speaking as to whether there will be a way to like compress it further from.
Sure, I think we can do something like that.
Okay.
It's definitely possible.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Oh.
We have two.
I'll get you after her.
As one of the community colleges in North Carolina, I was curious to see which schools are actually processing their applications from CFNC through Element and back and forth into Colleague already. Who is successfully doing that?
I think officially that's Wake Tech.
That's who I thought. Is that it?
Yeah, Wake Tech and Foresight as well.
Which school are you? Okay. Through CFNC. CFNC in North Carolina? Okay. So thank you. I just meant the CFNC application, but I appreciate that.
Right.
Because I know that's something we needed to figure out. So thank you.
Right. To elaborate a little bit on the CFNC part, it actually is we are pulling all the application data and also pulling the documents, the application document and also the student transcript. So Wake Tech, I think, is the first one going live with that, and I think Foresight Tech is behind. Yeah, let's do it.
Sounds like a good opportunity for the new community, right, that we linked you to today. So, shameless plug.
Any more questions? All good? Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening to us.
Awesome.